Hi Year 6, this is your maths lesson for Wednesday the 10th of February. I want to show you another great website which is free. Hopefully it will work on your devices at home. It's called Top Marks. And on here there's lots and lots and lots of different games and things that you can play. So it will send you into other websites. So this one, for example, sends you into a website called Maths Frame, and this has got some great games on it. This website isn't all completely free, but you might recognise some of these games that you've played before. A lot of them are free. So have a little click around. Maths Frame is another good website, but I actually want to show you a game here. And this is from the Top Marks website, and it's taken us into this website, and this is another matching game, and it will just help to consolidate your understanding. Okay, so let's have a little look at this game here. What am I going to start on? I might start on level 2, I think. Okay, so, I've got a half there, and let me see, well that looks like a half as well. Let's check. Yay! Okay, I have got, now that's a third, and I know that's a third. Check. Hey! Okay, that's another half there, isn't it? I didn't see that. And that's another half. Okay, these two must match then. Let's have a look. Yay! And, I've got a few that are halves actually, haven't I? That one's actually a half, and that one's actually a half. Now this one looks like 3/4. 3/4, let's check. Hooray! And that must mean that I'm left with 2/6 and 2/6. I think that level's a little bit easy for some of you, so I think try a harder level if you can. But again, this is a free online game, great way to warm yourselves up, warm up your brains. So have a go at this today for your warm-up, please, Year 6. Okay, Year 6, so your written activity for today, we're basically just trying to consolidate all of your fractions, decimals and percentages learning. So by playing those games online is really helpful. I've got an activity here where you've got a real mixture of things that you've got to do. So let's try and do a couple of these, shall we? We'll freeze on the sheet at the end to help you. This is your written activity if you want some practice. None of this is too tricky. Let's have a look. Number 1, what we've got to do is you've got to write 0.68 as a fraction. Well, I can see that I've got numbers in the tenths and the hundredths column. So I'm going to go with hundredths out of 100. And it must be 68 out of 100, okay? Because I've got 6 tenths and 8 hundredths. So I've written this decimal as a fraction, which is what it's asked us to do. Number 2 should not be too tricky. 0.5, well, that is actually the same as 50 out of 100, or we don't need to go to that extreme actually, we could have just written that as 5 tenths. If we wrote it as 5 tenths, that would also be the same as, hopefully you know, a half. But if you weren't sure, because always simplify, write it in its simplest form. Can I divide the numerator and the denominator by the same number? Well, I can. I can divide them both by 5. So if I divide them both by 5, that gets me to 2. I divide the top one by 5, that gets me to 1, and that proves to me that 0.5 is the same as 1/2. So we're using all our skills, all of our knowledge to try and make sure that we've got a really strong understanding of this. Okay, let's have a look at the next section then. So the top part, we've got to write all of these decimals and percentages as fractions. Let's have a little look at the second part where I've got to write things as decimals. I find this a little bit easier actually. So number 9, to write this as a decimal, I think that's actually easier. Because if I think about my place value and my tenths and my hundredths place, I know that I've got 4 tenths and 6 hundredths. So that fraction there looks like this is a decimal. It might be a little bit more tricky when you've got things like 1/4. So to write that as a decimal, well, no, I can't do that really in that form. Some of you might be able to, but it's much easier if you make it into hundredths, if you think about everything in hundredths. So what do I multiply 4 by to get to 100? Well, there's 4 25s in 100, isn't there? So that means I've got to multiply the numerator by the same, by 25. So that's 25 out of 100, but it wants it as a decimal. So again, I know that if it's hundredths, I'm looking at my tenths and my hundredths place. 1/4 is the same as 0.25. Some of these equivalencies, it's really good if you can memorise some of these. So some of you will be confident enough to memorise that a quarter is the same as 0.25 and a half is the same as 0.5. Okay, then you've got to write some as percentages. Well, I always think percentages aren't too tricky because you've just got to think of it as out of 100. What about this bottom part here? Give each answer as a decimal. Oh, let's have a look at this one. So I've got 0.5 plus 4/10. Ooh, now because they're in different forms, they're in different formats, I've got a decimal and I've got a fraction. It's going to be easier if I try and make these the same, isn't it? Well, I think it's quite easy to think of 4/10 like this, as 0.4. Now that's easier, isn't it? 0.5 plus 0.4, 0.9. And what does it want to give my answer in? Oh, it said give your answer as a decimal anyway, so I did want to go into decimals. What we'll do, we'll freeze on this sheet for you so that you know what you're doing for today's written activity. And then I'm going to show you a little bit of a challenge. So that shouldn't be too tricky for some of you. This is just for people that want a challenge. If you're comparing and ordering fractions and decimals, I want you to write this in ascending order. So getting bigger, so smallest first. Okay, and they're all in completely different format. Ooh, this is a bit tricky here because I've actually gone into a 3-place decimal here. What am I going to do with this? Am I going to make them all into decimals, all into fractions, or all into percentages? Well, I think I might make them all into decimals because 43% I can quite easily make into 0.43. Okay, this one's already in a decimal format, 0.344. So now I've only got to make 3/4 into a decimal format. I'm going to do that down here. So 3/4. If I want to make it into a decimal format, let's go into hundredths. Okay, so we know that 4 times 25 is 100. So I have to multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. 3 times 25 is 75. So actually now I know I can write this as a decimal. There we go, 0.75. So they're my 3 decimals now that I've got to compare, but they want them to be in ascending order. Which one's got the least tenths? Well, that one's only got 3/10, so that one must come first. That's my smallest one. I'm going to put a comma so it's really clear. So I'm working through between them. This one's only got 4/10, 0.43. And then this one over here has got 7/10, so this one is the bigger one. Okay, so now I've put these into ascending order. There's quite a lot of work here, but it shouldn't be too difficult for those of you that need a challenge. Okay, so this is your challenge sheet for today. So we'll put both of those sheets at the end of the video and you can choose between those whether you want to practice or whether you feel confident and you'd like a challenge. Good luck, Year 6.